Okay, hi, I'm Musbury. My day job is training the next generation of teachers at the University of Roehampton. Any teachers in the room? Any of you with children in school? A few more? Anybody who's been to school? That's a few more, that's good, okay. So alongside that, they let me out occasionally. I was part of the panel that put together the new computing curriculum, which is there as part of the national curriculum for local authority maintained schools in England. How do we go about that? Well, I think for some of us at least, our point of reference was William Morris writing back in 1880, talking about what you decide to put into your house. And he says you put in there things that you know are useful and things that you believe are beautiful. And as a rule of thumb for curriculum design, I think that's got a lot going for it. We put onto the curriculum the things that we know children are going to find useful in their secondary schools and up beyond secondary school in later life. But we also try to include in there things which we believe children are going to find really interesting. And there is a balance between the two. I don't see it as a tension. I think you've got to have both parts of that to make an effective curriculum around computing. Now, we've focused a lot in the media coverage around the new computing curriculum on teaching children to code, and I think that's absolutely right. But that's not what we're trying to set out to do with the new curriculum. Our aims are far more ambitious than that. The first sentence puts it, I think, very well. A high-quality computing education equips pupils to use computational thinking and creativity to understand and change the world. That's the level of our ambition here. It's about understanding the world and it's about changing the world. And the coding is fine because it takes you a long way along the path to that computational thinking side of that. This is a tool set. It's the sort of tools that we use to get computers to help us solve problems. It's about algorithms and logical reasoning, decomposition and abstraction and generalization. But it's also the code as a medium for creativity. And if you come back to my notion of both beauty and utility, teaching children to program in Python or Scratch or whatever is, I think, really very, very interesting. But there's relatively few of the pupils in school who are going to get careers in the software industry. I'd still say it's really useful and really important that they have that understanding of how code works, of how computers work. But actually, for many children going into university and on into employment, being able to work with the web well, confidently, competently, effectively, is going to be not only interesting, but also jolly, jolly useful. This is a medium, yes, for the computational thinking, but also such a rich medium for creative expression through that creativity. The Royal Society reporting up in January 2012 said the old ICT curriculum was damaged goods. Not so much the fault of what was happening on the national curriculum, but relatively limited GCSE specifications that involved pressing the print screen key repeatedly. They suggested replacing it with a new subject, computing, comprised of these three elements of computer science, of information technology, and digital literacy. One way of thinking about that is the foundations, the applications, and the implications of this discipline. So let's take the web as an example of that. The foundations of that, the computer science aspects. How does HTML code work? How does CSS work? What is an HTTP GET request all about? How does that travel through the infrastructure of the internet? All very, I'd say, interesting stuff, but I'm a bit of a geek. Much more useful, though, is the application of those ideas to creating online content. We're at the point now that a child in primary school can write a blog post that can be seen potentially by 2.5 billion other people. And we're routinely having primary school children writing content there out on the web. When I was at primary school a number of years ago now, the only person who read my work was my teacher, occasionally my mum. That's transformative, that now children have that means of production, that means of distribution in their hands. But then we move beyond that to some sort of critical digital literacy of considering the implications of that change for each of us as individuals and for us as a society. And I'm delighted that we have that entitlement to be taught how to use these technologies safely, responsibly, and I'd hope a little bit critically there as part of the national curriculum. Let me walk you through what we've put onto those programs of study. So starting with Key Stage 1 here, which is our 5 to 7-year-old children, we have, as well as all of the coding-y bits, that children should be taught to use technology purposefully to create, organize, store, manipulate, and retrieve digital content. Now, you can interpret that as meaning, putting together PowerPoint slides and word processing their stories, but this can also be about using these lovely, rich, dynamic, media-rich toolkits that are there on the web as a medium for doing these activities. And then recognizing common uses of IT beyond school, and which child, even at the age of 5 or 6, won't recognize this particular homepage. And recognizing what they do with that outside of school and bringing some of those experiences into the classroom as part of a digital show and tell, of a sharing of experiences, of a sharing of stories, I think ought to be part and parcel of primary school computing lessons. And of course, this entitlement to be able to be taught how to use these technologies safely and respectfully. Notice the reference to respectful use of these things. Children thinking about the other people that they're talking to online and showing them the sort of respect that they would show somebody who they met face-to-face in the real world, and indeed the same degree of caution. But notice also the reference right here in children's entitlement in Key Stage 1, 5 to 7, to keep their personal information private. And we all know that's a core e-safety message about don't post your home address or your pictures online, but think about what else that could mean in terms of educating children about privacy, about digital footprint, about the fact that everything that they do online stays online, that all of the websites that they visit, that generates a record on their computer, on their internet provider, and on the far computer. So on now into Key Stage 2, and again we have a number of elements of programming there, but looking beyond those, we get into this bullet point on the curriculum, that children before the age of 11 should be taught to understand computer networks, including the internet, and how they provide multiple services such as the World Wide Web, and then some of the opportunities that they offer for communication and collaboration. So yes, we focused a lot in our preparations for the new curriculum on teaching teachers to help children to learn to code, to program. But there's also this entitlement to learn about how the internet works. And developing that understanding, it's something children use day in, day out. It's something we use day in, day out. But how many pupils, how many of their teachers understand that technology? And shouldn't that be part of an all-round liberal education? And that the web is just one of the apps that we run on that infrastructure. Interestingly, the drafting group weren't sure about mentioning the web there, because are we sure that that's still going to be around in 10 or 20 years' time? Won't it make the curriculum look dated? I certainly hope that it will be. And then, of course, again, technology children will be using beyond school as well as in school to use search technologies effectively. That's core IT. But also to appreciate how those results are selected and ranked. How does Google, or indeed other search engines, go about putting that list of results together so very quickly? Developing children's understanding of that is part of this computer science entitlement. And then, of course, moving into that digital literacy domain about becoming a little bit more discerning in evaluating digital content. And yes, we teach children that they can't trust Wikipedia because that's been made up by people. But the rest of the web is made up by people too. And if something looks like the Guardian's page, doesn't necessarily mean it is the Guardian's page. And if something looks like Lloyds Bank's page, doesn't necessarily mean it is their page on which you're entering your password, sort number, and all of the account details. And then, of course, again, core IT about getting useful things done using technology. Notice the reference in there to a variety of software, including internet services on a range of digital devices. It's not enough now just to be able to use the word processor programs or the presentation software installed on the machine in front of you. We're moving beyond that into a curriculum which includes some hint of an entitlement to using cloud-based services and to using mobile devices. And shouldn't that be something children do learn about whilst they're still at primary school? Notice also the reference there to working with both data and information. Again, sense of entitlement to that. And then again, e-safety entitlement there, the addition here of responsibly and the emphasis on acceptable and unacceptable use. Getting children editing simple Wikipedia pages, using that as a technology responsibly, thinking about what it is that allows us to work together as a community to make that a better resource for everybody and what constitutes unacceptable use of that. On now up into Key Stage 3, 11-year-olds beginning of secondary school. And again, we have some entitlement to learn about the infrastructure, the technology itself, the machines. Yes, how the hardware and software components interact, but also how those hardware components, how those computer systems communicate with one another. Raspberry Pi, brilliant for this, because most school network managers won't have locked down access to the command line tools on that. And again, doing useful work using a range of software, including here, working with data. And there are some lovely cloud-based services to allow children to do that. And again, creating digital content, what we're calling digital artifacts, for a given audience, at paying attention to trustworthiness, design, and usability. So yes, by the end of Key Stage 3, by the age of 14, a child being able to set up their own blog, and to do that really well, and to have a sense of the audience for whom they're writing, so that their online footprint, their digital profile, is something which they're proud of. And so when they're Googled, that presents them in a very positive sort of light. And again, e-safety statements. Notice, though, here, the addition of security and talk about protecting online identity and privacy. So we get into issues about cryptography and how that can be used to protect their online content and online communication, and also the importance of password as a way of demonstrating your identity in online systems. The Key Stage 4 curriculum, to a large extent, we wimped out of this task and thought, well, the exam boards are going to deal with that. But not every child up at the top end of secondary education, 14 to 16, is going to choose to do a qualification in IT or in computer science. So there is a minimal entitlement there for every child up in Key Stage 4. It includes teaching children being taught to develop their capability, creativity, and knowledge in all three of those aspects, in computer science, in digital media, and in information technology. And that could well include using something like Twitter Bootstrap to create another site of their own, using HTML as the language for that, using CSS to present that exactly how they want to. HTML becoming a far more useful skill than word processing in many, many lines of work. But also, again, an entitlement to be taught about safe and responsible use. And this really interesting phrase in there about children being taught new ways to protect their online privacy and identity. And I'm not entirely sure that the drafting group who put this statement together had in mind onion routing and VPNs. But that's certainly one interpretation of teaching children new ways of keeping their identity private and protecting their identity online. Okay, if you want to ask questions, I'm going to be around at the end of this, but there's an email address and a Twittery thing and an occasional blog up on screen now. Thank you all very much.